Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the premiere of the 2024 Names, Not Numbers, a movie in the making. Since the beginning of the year, our 7th and 8th grade students have dedicated themselves to telling these stories of incredible bravery, strength, resilience, and survival. In September, we tasked you with telling the stories of Holocaust survivors to ensure that it never happens again. Just a few weeks later, on October 7th, the unthinkable happened, and your responsibility increased overnight. Never again is now. And as the world continues to question the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, it is you who continue to bravely document and tell the stories. The work you have done will serve to inform the world of the truth. It will preserve these important testimonies and give a choice to those who never had a chance to share their stories. This project is not possible without the generous support of our dear friend, Zoli Lefkovits, and her family. In honor of her beloved husband, Zoli, Zichronam Levracha. Judy, your devotion and dedication to the Park East community shows no bounds. Thank you. Thank you to Tova and Dove Rosenberg. Please stand up for a second, Tova and Dove, for creating this important program to educate our students and the world. You have helped them learn skills and lessons they will never forget, and you have allowed them to form relationships that will impact their lives forever. Thank you. The Names Not Numbers program could not have happened without the guidance and coordination of our middle school social studies teacher, Chrissy Fold. Stand up. Your students have devoted, you and your students have devoted your time to this project, and tonight is the result of all of your hard work. Chrissy, you exude class and elegance, and I'm honored to work with you every day. Everything you do is not only professional, but has so much heart and soul. Thank you for your care, concern, and love for our students, institution, this project, and me. Thank you. And of course, to our survivors. Rabbi Schneier, Professor Mattathias, Dr. Berger, and Sally, who could not be here, but Sally's family is here representing. Thank you for your time and your patience, your grace and your bravery. You embody the words, Hazorim b'dim'ah, Berina yiksoru. Those who sow in tears will reap in joyous song. You have experienced hardship, sadness, and tears, yet you have lived your lives with joyous song. Rabbi Schneier, your song is your synagogue, your school, you can hear them right now, and the Jewish students whose education you are responsible for every day. Professor Mattathias, your song is your passion for teaching, for life, and for your family. Dr. Berger, your song is your incredible contribution to the medical field, your kindness, and the beautiful family you have created. And Sally, your song is your poetry, your love for Israel, and the strength you have passed on to your children. Your songs will never be forgotten. And now it is my pleasure to call upon Yossi Schwartz and the Park East Day School Choir.
Thank you, Yossi, and the children of our day school. Just beautiful. Rabbi Schneier, Mrs. Schneier, Karen, Rabbi Flato, members of the Board of Trustees, Holocaust survivors, parents of our school, and perhaps most importantly, our children. Because as Rabbi always says, our children are our future. And tonight you'll see what the children of this magnificent school have been able to produce. But before we go there, we have to remember how we got here. And most especially, we have to remember Zoli Lefkovits. Judy, it's great to see you here. You're sitting in the same row as Zoli sat for all those years. So ladies and gentlemen, travel with me for a couple of minutes as I share with you the story of who Zoli Lefkovits was. First of all, I would say arguably he was the best dressed man at Park East Synagogue. And if you take offense to that, I apologize. 9 o'clock in the morning on the dot, Zoli would walk down the right aisle, sit right there where you're sitting by the Carton family. And then when he saw Rabbi Schneier, he would walk up to Rabbi Schneier, no matter where it was in the service, and something went on in Hungarian. Nobody knew what was going on, but 10 minutes into that, they had settled all the issues, both related to the synagogue and the school and world peace. They had a connection second to none. And Zoli's connection to this shul, Zoli's connection to the members, Nothing made Zoli happier than he walked into the building and he saw the little babies as they were dropped off by the parents, or he would see the kids singing as they sang just now. It brought him life. Zoli had gone through a lot in his life. He had saved his family in the Holocaust. He had taken care of his mom. And he came to America with literally nothing and built a beautiful family and was able to see nachas from his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Zoli's motto was never to give up. He believed in the eternal value of Am Yisrael Chai. I remember when Zoli got a little older, and in the last few months of his life, during COVID especially, when I went to visit him right here in the hospital at Cornell. And Zoli was slowly fading. But what brought him to life was the singing of Avinu Shebashamayim. I believe, Judy, you even have a video of where Zoli was almost completely out of it. But when we stood together, or rather sat together, and we sang the words of Avinu Shebashamayim, the prayer for the state of Israel, you could see tears streaming down his eyes. His love for Israel was phenomenal. He believed in Israel. He believed in the Jewish people. He had seen the Jewish people in their worst times, and he had celebrated the Jewish people in their very best times. But Zoli was also an interesting character. Zoli could go from 0 to 60 faster than a Maserati car. He had this idea, if he wanted something, and Judy, you know this, he would say it and it would happen whether you liked it or not. I remember we used to go to dinner at restaurants, and it was an experience because we would sit, the four of us, at dinner, and if Zoli saw a couple and they were on a date, he would just get up and sit next to them. And he'd say, "How's it going? Well, what do you do for a living?" to the guy. "And how are you going to support her?" And regardless of where they were in the date, Zoli made sure that by the time he walked out of there, there was going to be another date. He was a father to people. He had no shame. He would walk around in shul and welcome people, Hasidim, Reform Jews, conservative. It didn't matter to him. If you showed up at the synagogue, you were part of our family. And that's who we remember tonight when we dedicate this incredible film that you're about to watch. I have to, in conclusion, share with you an interesting thought that I believe you'll appreciate. Zoli's Hebrew name was Moshe. How does Moshe get his name? In fact, Moshe, the leader of the Jewish people, had 7 different names. But the one that sticks with him till today is Moshe, given to him not by his parents, but by a non-Jew, by Batya, who later converts. But she was the daughter of Pharaoh. And all the rabbis ask, how did we pick that the person who is the leader of the Jewish people, arguably one of the most famous Jews ever, would be named by a non-Jew? And the rabbis tell us that Batya had kindness in her heart. And that's the kindness that Moshe lived with. Batya stretched out her arm when she saw a little child in the water, the Bible tells us. And she took this child to her home, ironically to the home of the father who had decreed that all firstborns would be put to death. That same Moshe was Moshe Lefkovits. His love for the Jewish people, his kindness. There are people sitting in this very room that know exactly what I'm talking about. Any phone call Rabbi Schneier made to Zoli for support, financial support or other, Zoli was the first. He was always there to stand with our school and to stand with our institution. So it's really meaningful and beautiful to say that Zoli's legacy lives on. It lives on, Judy, through you, through your dedication, because you were truly his rock. It lives on through your children and your trips to Israel since October 7th and the dedication that you have made to Tzahal in Israel. It lives on through your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But it especially lives on with these children who come to services every morning at 7:45, standing in prayer in the same sanctuary that Zoli shed so many tears. You guys are Zoli's legacy. Thank you for what you do to keep Zoli's memory alive. And thank you to each of you for not forgetting the incredible Zoli Moshe Lefkovits. Am Yisrael Chai.
Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work, their filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
Unfortunately, I lost my grandparents in Auschwitz. In fact, my grandfather was a very famous rabbi. He was my second father. He and my grandmother, family, all ended up in Auschwitz, never to return. I made a vow, whatever I do in life, in memory of my grandfather, I will study to be a rabbi.
Inside me, I always heard my father's voice. Even though, children, I don't remember how my father looked.
It belonged to my in-laws and they were forced to buy it. All Jews have to wear it.
Neighbors were silent as they were watching the evacuation of their compatriots who happened to be Jewish, to be taken on railroad cars to Auschwitz. They returned to reclaim their lives and their properties. What was the reaction of their neighbors? Why are you back? Why didn't Hitler complete the job?
Remembering the Holocaust is not only important to make sure that it never happens again, but it is also important to see how people shape their lives based off of something that happened to them 80 years ago.
It's kind of our obligation to preserve the lives and stories of the survivors. When that type of history isn't preserved, it can repeat itself in unfortunate ways. My dad went through a great deal of trouble trying to educate me on the Holocaust.
My mom taught me from a young age. I would also read a lot of books that were unusual for my age.
I like to read books about it because I like to know my history and what happened.
I know much about the Holocaust, but I still wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn a person's perspective and experience.
I feel a responsibility to really make their stories come to life.
Names Not Numbers is a program where we interview Holocaust survivors and we can really experience what they've gone through
and allow them to show that they aren't numbers, they are really names.
Giving somebody a number in place of their name, it brings them to a level below human.
Because names are important, names are their identity.
These survivors' names were taken away from them and this is their way of reclaiming them.
Welcome to the launch of the second year of this very special program, Names Not Numbers. Last year, you showed that you were mature and capable as you thoughtfully told and documented the important testimonials of Holocaust survivors.
I joined Names Not Numbers last year because I was ready to have a once-in-a-lifetime experience that not everyone would be able to be a part of.
I joined Names Not Numbers last year to spread the awareness of the Holocaust and to make sure that I hear as many stories as I can.
I learned a lot about the Holocaust and about my individual survivor's story.
I thought it would be a really interesting program, and I thought I would really enjoy myself working with these Holocaust survivors, and it would be a good skill to know how to actually speak with people and interview people. Well, I had a good experience the time before, so I joined it again.
I really enjoyed it last year, and I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to learn new people's stories and be able to share stories again.
You are back here today because you know how crucial it is to tell these stories to the world so they will not be forgotten.
I've always liked history and learning about the Holocaust, and when an opportunity like this shows up, you can't refuse.
What is Names Not Numbers about? The project. There is Parashat Azinu, and in it there's a quote, and it says, Zechor Yamot Olam, remember the days of old. But it goes on to say how to remember. Sha'al avicha v'yagedcha, ask your forefathers and they will tell you. And this is exactly what you were doing.
We were given a video of previous students' accomplishments and what they did.
The Germans came into our town when I was 2 years old.
And I thought it was really cool how they managed to make it that nice.
A 2-hour-long interview was made into a 16-minute video. And that really showed me that we can interview the Holocaust survivors.
I was scared that I was not going to be able to live up to the past Names Not Numbers videos.
You are the tail end of the generation that has the great privilege to be able to speak to a survivor, to interview a survivor, to ask the questions that you want to know, and have Sha'al avicha v'yagedcha.
Today I'm going to talk to you about interviewing techniques, some tips on how you're going to do the interviews.
We had a journalist come in and teach us how to properly conduct an interview.
The overriding theme I want to share with you is you want to have a conversation with the survivor, not throw a series of questions at them. Many reporters struggle with this issue. They go into an interview with a series of questions. I only have a short amount of time with my subject. I've got to ask all these different questions, and too often they fall into this trap of going through the questions.
Always maintain eye contact, and if they say something important, you should nod.
So they know that their story's being heard.
You may think you have like the best 25 questions in the world, but let's say the survivor says, that's interesting, it reminds me of a story. You want to go where the survivor wants to go, where your interviewee wants to go. So if you make it a natural conversation, it's just, the end product is much better. It's also just a better experience for you and for them.
Describe your family.
He would have one of us come up and we basically act out the interview. He'd tell us about his life and we'd be asking the questions, and I think it really helps prepare us for our interview today.
That's the end.
Okay, nice job.
Last year I joined Names Not Numbers because I thought it would be like a really cool experience to not only be able to speak with a Holocaust survivor, I would also get to learn about filmmaking. And I learned some really valuable information about using a camera to film a documentary.
I really enjoyed the filming. Last year, I didn't know how to use a camera, and then this year it was cool to me that I knew how to use a camera.
So if that's her in the center, you can just, have her just be a little more to the left.
You don't put them straight in the middle, put them to the side of it.
We learned that there should be more space in front of where the person's looking than behind them.
If I'm right here, there should be more space here because the eyes go directly to me and the eyes don't go to what's behind me. But if there's more space over here,
it makes people want to look more at the background and less at the survivor.
Now, why you need to know this, because it's already set up, it's just in case you have to make any adjustments, especially on the close-up camera.
I thought it was kind of cool to work with the camera because I've never really done that. It's my first time only today. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. I don't know.
It was cool to learn how to zoom in and to focus.
The camera was very fun. We learned about the sparkles.
The red sparklies.
Yes, the sparklies, yes. Can you tell me what the sparkles are?
The sparkles show how focused a camera is. And the zooming in, it was very fun learning about how to work and use a camera.
I like cameras, I like filming. This specific type of camera, I'm not really used to it, how it works. It's really cool, and it taught me a lot.
Every Friday or every other Friday, we would work on our computers and we'd talk with each other. We'd read our survivor's biography.
And created about 50 or more questions that we would ask the Holocaust survivors.
I'm feeling a little nervous and excited because this is a new survivor, but I have prepared and I'm excited to learn more about his story.
I'm feeling very prepared, but nervous too.
I joined again because hearing the personal stories of the survivors was really meaningful, and I wanted to learn more.
I was told that one of the survivors was going to be Rabbi Schneier, so I was like, how cool would it be if I got to interview the dean of the school that I've been going to for the past 10 years of my life?
Last year I participated in this project and I told my teacher who was running it that my grandfather is a Holocaust survivor as well, and this year she thought that it would be a good opportunity to have a grandson of a Holocaust survivor interview him.
To hear an individual story means a lot more, and it just feels a lot more personal and real.
When you hear it in person, it really shows you the pain in their eyes and what they truly experienced.
It's such a special occasion to meet with a Holocaust survivor. So, I'm kind of nervous for that.
I'm a bit anxious right now, but I feel like I'd get more comfortable in the chair.
I'm feeling scared that I might mess up, but I'm also excited because I'm getting to interview the Holocaust survivors, and I'm gonna be the next link in the chain.
Having done this last year, I'm not that nervous, but again, it's a new survivor, so there's always those unexpected twists that can happen.
I was last year, so I was like, this is not that bad once I actually got up to it, because all you have to do is be yourself. It's just asking them questions. It's not much more than that.
So what's your name?
It was really interesting to see him talk to my friends. He made them feel very warm and welcomed, and he was very humorous.
That's the way, I like it.
He really made them smile, and I try to capture that when I was doing the camera work.
My name is Asher J. Matathias. I was born December 3rd, 1943. Holy, a few weeks from now, my big 80 birthday.
My name is Sally Mushel. I was born in Poland in the city which called Dąbrowa Tarnowska.
Joseph Berger, September 20, 1937, in a town called Subotica on the border of Yugoslavia and Hungary.
Arthur Schneier, March 20, 1930, Vienna, Austria. Okay, go ahead.
I had a brother, but unfortunately my brother died just before the war. My aunt lived not in the same house with her daughter. She was a widow, so she ate with us. And my father was a very special person. Everything what I remember is the Friday nights when I always sat on my father's lap and he was telling me all the stories, all the midrashim. You see, it goes from generation to the generation. I used to tell those stories, the midrashim, my children and my grandchildren. We were considered well-to-do. My childhood was really wonderful. I can't say that I felt any anti-Semitism. I know there is, but I personally never felt, because I had a lot of friends which were not Jewish.
My mother's family, they had a company called Bratia Goldner, which means Goldner Brothers. They made many, many, many things for kitchens and for bathrooms. And they had a big, big factory there. There were 2 entrances on either side. You go up there, that's where the family lived. And up top, there was a big, big connection where the family used to go for the family holiday dinners. There were a lot of workers there. They even had a 50-bed hospital. The train stopped in the back, so they didn't have to send anything out by trucks. Everything left by train. My early life at home in Subotica, I remember very little because my father, who was a physician, moved to Belgrade. And we lived in Belgrade. He had a doctor's office in Belgrade. And then he was drafted by the Yugoslav army. He was a physician in the army.
My father named me in honor and in memory of his brother. My mother lived in Salonika. Salonika used to be a majority Jewish city in Greece. My father is part of what is known as the Romagnot Greek Jews. I was born in primitive surroundings. There were no hospitals, no doctors. What my mother did have was a midwife who came from a neighboring village in difficult circumstances with snow very high to come and deliver me.
I'm an only child. I lost my dad before the war when I was 6 years old. My dad owned a department store, and after he died, my mother took over. So it was my mother, myself, grandparents, uncles, aunts. That was the family structure. I went to a public school and also afternoon Hebrew school at my synagogue. Did I have friends? Yes, my classmates. We played soccer. We bought ice creams together. Did many things together. But then when the Nazis took over, all these friends whom we hosted, some of them my mother and my dad, when he was still alive, helped with aid and so forth. They all dropped me like a hot potato. Guess why?
Anti-Semitism.
Because I was a Jew. And you think they did that on their own? Or you think, now I'm asking you a question, you think they did that on their own? Or you think their parents told them stay away from the Jew?
Probably their parents.
The parents. So what can parents do?
Influence their kids.
They can teach you how to love your neighbor, or they can teach you how to hate your neighbor. So children, all of you, are not born with hatred toward anyone, right? Am I correct? Right. There's a very famous prayer where you say, Veshinantam levanecha, you shall teach them unto your children. Veshinantam levanecha. Most of the buildings in Vienna were draped with Nazi flags. These were local Nazis who sympathized with the Hitler regime, and they always thought of uniting Austria with Germany. You were not permitted to go to theater, movie, parks, sports. They separated us in public school, and they put the Jewish kids into a special school only for Jews. My new school was in the 1st district, so I had to walk from the 2nd district, which was really where most Jews lived. I would always like to go with an adult because the Hitler Jugend, this was the Nazi youth organization, they would beat up Jewish kids.
My parents sent me away the minute the war broke out. They sent me away to Polish family. We were traveling, we were running away with this family. You see, my father couldn't go because he was called to the army. And he's supposed to go like in 3 or 4 weeks in this place, so he has to stay. But of course, the whole war, the whole Poland It was only like 4 weeks and there was no more pollen. But on the way, when we were traveling, the bombs were falling down. There were so many dead people. But I was oblivious to anything. Everything what I was doing is crying. I was 10 years old. I thought my parents don't like me anymore. They are sending me away, they don't want me anymore. I didn't know that they're sending me because they want to save my life.
My mother, her brother, my sister and I got into our car, we had a little car, we put some food in the truck and we started driving to north to go to Hungary, where we had family, so in Subotica. As we were driving out, the Germans came back again. And then they took out the dive bombers and they were killed, strafing and shit, regardless of who you were. We ran out of the car, hid in the trench, and the car got hit in the back. And what I remember is seeing the flour and the sugar pour out of the trunk. When everything was stopped, we got back into the car, and a day or so it took us, and we got to the border town and to Subotica. And my dad, I know, was in the army. He was captured and escaped. And because he spoke Hungarian as well as everybody, he stole a Hungarian uniform and dressed like a Hungarian, and he came back. It was terrific. Every day we had breakfast together, and he came home, we had dinner together, and it was a very, very fine father, and it was fun. My life in Hungary, there was two parts, in Subotica, Szabadka, and in Budapest. The one in Subotica, it was like a little town, very Jewish, and we went to the synagogue, we were with the family for holidays. In Budapest, life was different. Budapest was a big, big city. My aunt and uncle had a place there. We'd go visit them. We lived right near the Danube. We used to go walk. Just played with my Jewish kids and Gentile kids. Allied planes were flying over, going east. And so we used to go down to the basement like that. Also, food was very, very rationed. And then all of a sudden, Hungary became very buddies, good friends with the Germans, and Jews had to wear stars, couldn't go to school, couldn't go to work. There's Magen David. Family wore it. I didn't have to wear it, I think I was too young. My father was sent to a labor camp. My father knew he was a doctor, so they let him come back to Budapest from the camp, where he worked as a doctor. Not a pediatrician. Even though he was a pediatrician, he worked like a regular doctor.
Hitler came to the aid of Italy, and with that, they conquered Greece. The chief rabbi of Volos, Moshe Pesach, were aided in a plan to save the Jews of Volos. The German diplomat, who was also a businessman and knew Greece well, came to ask that they do whatever they can to hide Jews in the mountains. It was the good fortune of my father to have a couple in business. There were collaborators in business who came to my parents and said, please come with us. We have land in the mountains. We can hide you. And they listened. And it was there that I was born, in a very primitive environment, almost like a cave. Earthen floor, no electricity, no food, very little food. Goat's milk. Have you tried goat's milk? No. They would fool me by putting some coffee, because my mother, since she did not eat, she had nothing to nurse me with. My father would sleep out during daylight hours, very dangerous period, to help with the underground, the resistance. And then he would sleep back on in the evening. There was help from neighbors, from other villagers. There was a stone oven outside, but very, very little in quantity and quality of food. But we had to survive somehow. It was just staying alive. That's just staying alive.
It was not easy to get visas. Our dream was to come to the United States, my mother and I. In order for her to get the visa, she would have had to wait 15 years. I was born in Vienna, she was born in Romania. I could have gotten a visa, but at the age of 9, I was going to go alone. And finally, on a tourist visa, we went to Hungary in 1939, where my grandparents lived. In Vienna, we did not have yellow stars. In Hungary, we started compulsory April 1, 1944, yellow star. You were a marked person. You would be beaten up. You would be limited when you could go out on the street. The Jews from the countryside were just sent into ghettos in order to control the Jewish people. The Nazis appointed a Jewish council, and then they gave orders to the Jewish council. We need 100 apartments. Make sure that the apartments in this district occupied by Jews is relinquished within 48 hours. In order to notify the Jews who lived in those apartments, you had couriers who delivered the note. So I worked for the Jewish council, and they would give me, go to this district and hand the notice. That's it.
My uncle, he said, don't worry, you're gonna stay with me, with my family. I was with this family probably a month or two, and this was already April 41. June, in the middle of the night, the KGB, but this time they were called NKVD, came in the middle of the night and said, you have 1 hour to pack up and you go. So we all pack up the stuff. We came to the station. There were a lot of people, and not only Jews, there were Polacks too. They put us in cattle wagon. When the wagon was full, they closed it. Sanitation was terrible because, you know, there's no bathroom. It's a hall which you have to clean. Oh, but they gave us every single day some soup and some piece of bread. And we traveled like this. Take a look. We were traveling till here with the wagons, yeah? And we went with the barge with this river, and we traveled up till here. On this river, I got sick, I got typhoid. And the whole transport was going. I came to this place, and I didn't know they left me alone.
There was a man named Kostner who was negotiating with Eichmann. He was going to try to save as many Jews as he could. And they formed the Kostner group. And in the group, there were 50 orphan Polish kids. There was Yoelish Teitelbaum, the Satmar Rebbe, and his crew. And there were some very, very rich Jews. And there were the people who were Zionists, like my father, my father-in-law-to-be. We were supposed to go to Palestine. We were placed in cattle cars, and the train started going west. Because D-Day had happened, and Allies had landed in France and Spain, we couldn't go that way. And we started going east and going towards Austria. And when we got to the border between Austria and Hungary, something happened, and we stopped the train for 3 days. We didn't know where to go, what to do, well, because the bombings were going on, the war was going on. And all of a sudden, there was a lady sitting next to my dad who was pregnant. She got into labor. My father, not an obstetrician, I'm the obstetrician. My father, the pediatrician, delivered a little baby girl and used my shoelaces to tie the umbilical cord.
A German patrol located our hiding place. Nothing happened except miracle. As the head of patrol passed the makeshift crib where I was being put, he looked down and he smiled. And he made some kind of motion to indicate that he also had a young boy like me. The next word out of his mouth was, "Rouse! Out! Never to bother us again." Because of the act of one German, the Stamos couple really took us under their wings and protected us in every way possible. This couple never had children. They could not have children. They came to my parents and said, "Look, Jacob, and Nina, supposing, God forbid, you do not survive, but little Asher somehow survives. Do you agree what? That we can adopt him? We even picked out a name for him. His name would become Apostolos, the apostle." My parents were aghast at first. What? But then they thought it over. Okay, obviously let the kid survive. Well, guess what? The three of us survived. The same couple came back with another proposition. What was it? "Look, you're young. You're going to have other children. Why don't you leave Asher with us?" The relationship got to be between the two couples, got to be so fraught that she, the other woman, suggested that they go see this metropolitan, a religious man. He listened to them and said, "Madam, it's all right with you if the Marathias family lives here and you live here, and they would never interact. They would see daily their son around." No. He concluded, "Give Asher back to his natural parents." No.
I was there probably like a month and a half and come or two. I really didn't know exactly. And then when I walk out, first thing, I couldn't understand even one word what they are talking to me. I didn't know why I am here. Where are all the people? Where am I? They asked me my name. They showed me, they told their name, and they asked me my name. I couldn't remember my name. They put me in the orphan home, for prisoners. I mean that their parents are prisoners. I told them that I am older, so I had 3 other children to take care of, little ones. This was everybody had some responsibility to do something.
The train started going again. We arrived at a place called Bergen-Belsen. People were separated. Men in one place, and children and women in another place. All these different barracks. My dad was in the men's side, and then they made one of the barracks the hospital barrack, and he was sent in there, and then we moved in with him. They had what was known as called appel, roll call, 5 o'clock in the morning. You have to get up and stand on line for the counting as if anybody really had a chance to escape, make sure everybody was there. And the man who did the counting for our barrack turned out to be the father of the girl that my dad delivered on the train. They wanted us to learn how it would be to live in Israel. So we learned how to do some Hebrew songs, we learned how to do a horror. We also celebrated the holidays. The hospital barrack, first floor of it, was the Space Synagogue. I had my 7th birthday there. My mom and dad saved a couple of slices of bread and made what looked like a cake, a couple of slices of bread. That was my birthday present. To our right, there was a camp with Russian soldiers, and to the left, there were Dutch people. Never had a chance to talk to the people, the Russians or the people on the other side. We were playing like children. We played some soccer in there, and what happened was that we kicked the ball over to the Russian side, and one of the guards was so nice to get the ball, except he got it with a bayonet and brought it.
We went back to our hometown to reclaim my father's business, our home, and for us to have a semblance of regularity. But it would not be, because during the Civil War, my father was called to service. He had served as a soldier prior to the occupation. I went to a school with only 2 Jewish students, me and my other Ephraim. A few weeks before Passover, they would become estranged to me. They would not play with me. Why? They were indoctrinated, I learned later, by the parents that Jews are looking for Christian kids to extract their blood for the upcoming season of Passover, for the matzah. And on Good Thursday or Holy Thursday, they would congregate in front of our home. I remember that. And they would start singing, Simera Mavro Suranos, Simera Mavri Mera, meaning today is a dark day. It's a bad day because our Savior is crucified. And Jews did it. My mother, with all her courage, she would open the shutters and cry out, "Get out of here! What are you doing here? There is nothing wrong with the beautiful sunny day that is typical in Greece."
During the war, when I would walk the streets threatened by Hitlerjugend in Vienna, or when I would face all kinds of death threats, I kept on repeating a very famous line from Adon Olam. What's the last word?
Velo ira.
Adonai li, velo ira. God is with me, I am not afraid. And I kept on saying this all along. And I guess he heard me.
At night, the KGB took me and they put food on the table, but they will not give me food. But they said I should sign and I want to stay there, and they're going to send me back to, Central Russia, to school, and I'm going to be in heaven. If I wouldn't say that I don't have parents there which were in Siberia, if I would say my uncle, I wouldn't be sitting here, I would be there. See, I was a child, and God gave me the brain to say, no, those are my parents, I want to go on to my parents. And when they came, with the whole transport came to Yakutsk, I came back with my uncle, and we traveled to the Middle Russia. They took us to Middle Russia. The name was Saratov. This was close to Stalingrad. And we came there. There was already much, much better. There was much more food. You could, I was working there already in the office. It's again, I told them that I'm much older. We were there till the liberation.
Things changed in Hungary when a fascist regime took over. 500,000 Jews in a short period of time were mostly sent to Auschwitz and other places of horror. The right-wing Hungarians, they called Nyilas, came by and asked everyone to come down to the street. I was hiding, but then finally they went from apartment to apartment and they found me too. We were lined up to go to the railroad station, and knowing what would happen, I filled my pockets with lump sugar. One of the, not German, Hungarian fascists came and slit my pocket, and all my lump sugar, with the exception of 4 pieces, fell on the ground. We were outdoors, standing at the railroad station for 3 days. And I allocated for myself every day, half a piece of lump sugar and so on. And then miraculously, or not miraculously, Switzerland, Portugal, Spain, Vatican, were given permission to have what they called a safety house. Let's say about 25,000 Jews were in these safety houses. I was one of them. You had food shortages, people were starving. You had the outbreak of typhoid, the threat of these thugs coming in and actually, which they did, putting people out. And those safety houses that were on the Danube, they would pull the Jews out and actually shoot them into the Danube.
Joint Distribution Committee and Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, came to my parents and other Jews and said, look, we did not do enough to save Jews during the Holocaust, but now we can help you. Do you want us to help you rebuild in Volos, or do you want to come to America? My father had a vote of one. We're going to America. In 1956, we came to America. I was 12 years old, and that December of the year, I was to turn 13. So I was full of pep to have my bar mitzvah. On the Thursday, before the Shabbat of my bar mitzvah, I went to shul, I put on tefillin, and then I went to class. That evening, my father returns from a hospital. I had a sickly sister. I did not know how sick she was, who died. And I could hear my mother's screams when my father returned from Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn to announce the passing.
I was liberated by the Russians. Some of them were from very backward parts of the Soviet Union. They didn't have watches, okay? So if they saw someone with a watch left, they would just grab the watch, okay? Or a Russian soldier would walk into an apartment and they saw a clock, and they said to the watchmaker, "Can you make me 3 watches from the clock?"
There was no liberation. Nobody had to liberate us. They told us, please get dressed. A couple of days before, they started giving us extra food to eat, so we wouldn't look so emaciated. And then we packed the stuff and walked to the train station. Same way we walked there, we walked at the train station. Except when we got to the train station, we had a train, not cattle car.
Throughout the world, throngs of people hail the end of the war in Europe. It is 5 years and more since Hitler marched into Poland. Years full of suffering and death and sacrifice. Now the war against Germany is won.
One day we were found out the war is over, and 45 we came back to Poland. And Poland, I found out all about my family. The Germans, when they came to every city, they made a ghetto and they made the Judenrat. The Judenrat took all the care for whatever was needed in the ghetto, but the Judenrat also had to give lists for Aussiedlung. Aussiedlung meant to go to transportation, to go to camps. My father refused. He knew the ramification very well that he's going to be right away killed. You don't refuse the Germans. But he rather gave away his life than to help the Germans' atrocities. All my uncles, aunts, the whole family, everybody was killed. I also found out about my mother, a second cousin of mine. She was alive and she was working with my mother in the ghetto. They took them all to Auschwitz, and she survived, but she says she never saw my mother again. So probably Mengele sent her straight to the oven.
We went to Switzerland, to a place called Terité, which was right by the Lake Geneva, and my dad was the doctor there, and that's where I first learned French, and I went to school, to start at school.
After the war, I went back to my birthplace. We were able to get our apartment back, and my mother also survived, so that was wonderful. Unfortunately, I lost my grandparents in Auschwitz. In fact, my grandfather was a very famous rabbi. He was my second father. And then in 1944, he and my grandmother, family, all ended up in Auschwitz, never to return. I made a vow, whatever I do in life, in memory of my grandfather, I will study to be a rabbi. Not necessarily practice, study to be a rabbi, okay?
There was this guy on the block. He carried a lot of bitterness with him. He went through the Holocaust. He said there was one Jew, and for you to imagine, people lived in camps, right? They're working in a certain closed area. It's like pretty much prisoners. And there was one guy that had a piece of siddur. If you wanted to use it, guess what? You have to give him your lunch. So his complaint was that this Jew that had the siddur, how could he possibly do such a thing by conditioning, oh, you want to pray? You want to daven? You have to give me your lunch. Is this what your religion stands for? A rabbi heard the story. The rabbi asked him, did anyone actually give away their lunch for praying, for their faith, for their emunah? So he looked at the rabbi and said, what are you talking about? You had to see a line of people every day. And if it was Rosh Chodesh or something or a holiday, he would get everybody's lunch. Tells him the rabbi, are you listening to yourself? People are at the worst condition in the world. Or they're willing to give the only meal they get a day just to use a siddur to pray and to connect to their Father in Shamayim. So you can choose to look at this one guy that is not doing the right thing, obviously. What about the rest of the people? Isn't this our face? Isn't this what we look like? That we are willing to give our food, we are willing to give the only meal we have a day in order to use a siddur? That we know our tradition relies very much on what you guys do. Be'ezrat Hashem, we are the future of the Jewish nation. Thank you so much.
My uncle was the American commander. Vienna was occupied, divided rather, a Russian zone, French, British, and American. And my uncle, who had to flee, he went back to Europe, fighting with the armed forces of the United States. I made up my mind, my mother too, that we will not stay more than the time before we were able to get the visa to the United States.
There was a list of survivors. My father's name was Imre Mirko Berger, and he was on the list with a wife and 2 children. So a friend of his best friend, who lived in New York, in Manhattan, sent a check for $50. Now in those days, the check only had the bank's name on it, didn't have your name on it, but the gentleman said, if this is my friend, he will recognize my signature and he'll know how to get in touch with me. And then we decided we are going to go to America.
It was not by plane, it was by Marine Marlin. It was an army ship. And the journey took 12 days.
And then we took a ship called the MS Batory, B-A-T-O-R-Y. When we arrived, we pulled up next to the Queen Mary. We looked like a tugboat. That's how small we were compared to the Queen Mary. Wow. I arrived in America and then they said, new life.
The best place to be when you're seasick is on the top because you get air, all right? My mother gave me $20 to take along, $20. Okay? First time I had a grapefruit was on that journey. And you know what the sailors charged me for a grapefruit?
What?
$2. A lot of money, isn't it? Anyhow, okay.
I didn't speak English at the time, so when we got there, I spoke Hungarian to him, and I was hungry. And I said, I'm so hungry. So all of a sudden, a guy who was selling sandwiches in Hungarian says, "Would you like to have a ham sandwich?" I said, "Oh my God, I speak Hungarian. This is great. New York is terrific." We stayed a couple of hours, and then we went to the Bronx. So we stayed in the Bronx for the first 3 days in the United States I spent in the Bronx.
We came to New York 12 o'clock at night, Thursday night. Monday morning, my husband's uncle, Philip, came and he said, "I have a job for you. I'm gonna work on a shop. What I'm gonna do, very interesting job. I'm gonna fold blouses." Fine.
50 years later, my late mother comes to me and said, "You know, Asher, we did not have a bar mitzvah for you. Now, I want you to prepare to have a bar mitzvah at the age of 63.
I never really knew the story in detail, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to really learn the story. It's really special that you could hear the events that happened leading up to you being born.
He was such a big inspiration for me to just live life and not be afraid of the things that happen or things that are behind you, to live life and to just keep your head forward.
It was very nice to meet Dr. Berger. There was a lot of things I could connect with him on, like the place where he worked. My grandmother worked there too.
Sally read to us a poem that she wrote, and it was very inspirational.
So remember, my child, your fatherless words. No matter what life has in store for you, remember, my child, remember it well, that you are a daughter of Israel.
They are so strong to restart their lives in a totally new place, even when they have to live with their trauma.
My cemetery from everybody is in my heart, so the pain is always there.
What's your message to the upcoming generation?
Never forget, stay proud of being a Jew.
You should never forget about the Holocaust. Our hope is in you children, that you would carry the torch of remembrance.
We are the students of the school that you founded and built. What is it like to be sitting here today being interviewed by your students?
Whenever I walk into this building and I see you guys, I'm uplifted. Why? You are the guarantee of the Jewish future, and knowing that each one of you will make a contribution. Whatever field you choose, you're going to excel. And we gave you the foundation.
The second message is a blessing to you. You should go, Chayil el Chayil. You should have a lot of mazal in your life and in all your endeavors, and you should bring a lot of pride to your parents and to Jewish community. Amen.
Faith is important, compassion is important, humility is important, and empathy to being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person.
Despite all that you've witnessed and experienced, are you optimistic about the future?
The answer to that is, what is the national anthem of Israel?
Hatikva?
And what does Hatikva mean?
Hope.
Okay. All right.
One of the things that she kept saying to me in those last months, Asher, you're my hero. during the occupation, during the Holocaust. I said, what did I do? I was a baby. Yes. But you were quiet. Do you understand what? In other words, I did not betray them. I was not one of those babies who cried.
My father, the pediatrician, delivered a little baby girl. That little girl survived the war, went to Australia, became director of cardiology at University of New South Wales. She came to New York, and with her aunt, and her aunt, and I, and my mother, and my sister, we had dinner near us, and she had the birth certificate that my father had signed.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight to witness the hard work of our students and the brave testimonies of our survivors. This program has been 7 months in the making and would not have been possible without some very special people. Tova and Dove Rosenberg, your Names Not Numbers project has changed the world, and we are so lucky to be a part of it. Thank you for your leadership and guidance. Thank you to Drew Aldridge, our incredibly talented and patient filmmaker and instructor. To Greg Zuckerman, a friend and visiting journalist who made time to work with our students on important interview techniques. To Principal Debbie, you have been the best partner in this project. Nothing happens without your behind-the-scenes work and coordination. You have made it all possible by supporting our work in every way. Cantor Benny, thank you for supporting this project and providing the resources necessary to make tonight a success. To Rabbi Schneier, Professor Mattathias, Dr. Berger, and Sally, thank you for working with us to create a documentary. We are inspired by your strength, resilience, passion, and hope. To my dear students, I am so proud of you. It is you who will carry on the legacy of Holocaust survivors by continuing to combat anti-Semitism and by telling the truth. This film is your promise to tell their stories, to make sure the world never forgets the darkness they survived and the joy they have brought to the world. I would like to acknowledge each group individually by calling them up and presenting each survivor with a gift. The gift will include the original DVD with your unedited 2-hour interview. I'd like to start, please, with Professor Asher Mattathias. His grandson, Daniel Avitan, Masua Chaikin, Rami Fishman, Ethan Friedman, and Sadie Graff. Thank you. Dr. Joseph Berger, Elia Bitton, Noah Deutsch, Rachel Frank, Nate Ottensasser, Ethan Simoni, and Audra Suleiman. Unfortunately, Sally can't be here with us tonight, but we have some of her family members, her cousin and her niece. So I would love for them to join me up here with Sam Burland, Ben Buller, Sophie Goot, Larkin Horowitz, and Nina Kirchner. Rabbi Schneier, George Feelig, Gabriel Ohayon, Elizabeth Pinkasoff, Debbie Ruiz, and Adam Saban.
Meet the new producer of films, not in Hollywood, but now in New York City. I'm very tempted to address you in Hungarian. Persze. And Zoli is hearing us. And we're walking together with you, Judy, and Zoli, but not only the past, but rebuilding Jewish life in Debrecen, in Israel. And I can go on just saluting you and Zoli, who is watching us. Debbie, Dynamo, Spirit, thank you, thank you. Tova, thank you for, you can rise. Okay. Now, thank you. Thank you. Now I speak on behalf of my fellow Holocaust survivors. We're the privileged ones. And I'm sure that you, like I, every day we say, Hodu Lashem ki tov, ki leolam chasdo. We could have ended up like 1.5 million children during the Shoah. Their names commemorated in Yad Vashem, 1.5 million Jewish children. So, if we survived, we survived for a purpose. Thanking God every day for the life granted. So, I resolved, as you heard, to devote my life to paying back. Paying back. And I remember going to synagogues in Budapest and Vienna. You couldn't find a child. I was one student in Vienna among 800 non-Jews in a gymnasium. So, when I assumed the pulpit at Park East Synagogue, Zichron Ephraim, on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 62, there were only 2 children in this entire building. My daughter, my son, Rabbi Mark, and so I made up my mind, I'm not going to preside over an old age home. I'm determined to build a school. And how privileged, Professor Matthias, your daughter teaches your grandchild right here. Lador Rador. Now, another thing, when you go through the Shoah, on Purim, we read the Megillah. Why? Zachor, remember, remember. Not only what Amalek did to you, but what Hitler has done to us, what Hamas is doing to us. There's a lot of evil in this world. I encountered in my life the best in man and the beast in man. The best in man and the beast in man. And many of you are very privileged. You want to visit your family's graves? Well, New Montefiore, Mount Carmel. We want to visit my family, the graves of the crematory of Auschwitz, Theresienstadt, Lublin, which Elizabeth and I visited every time. And Karen and Mark will be going on the March of the Living again. And the final lesson that one learns. Hear the cry of the oppressed. Hear the cry of the oppressed. And that's why I'm so proud that unlike during World War II, after October 7th, the solidarity of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, American Jewry was asleep during the Holocaust. Roosevelt misled American Jews. American Jews were afraid of their own being, of their own safety. We learned our lesson. Ishmo and Kadasir, hear the cry of the oppressed. And that's why I made it my point to make sure that the Holocaust in Auschwitz is remembered, not only by Jews, but in 2008, I managed to have the international community adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Day And now 120 nations, Europe, Asia, Africa, observed the Holocaust on January 27th. And of course, you and our own children. January 27th, every year we remember the Shoah. Every year we remember. And that's what Pesach is all about. Magid. Magid. Tell the story. And the story is not only in our generation. Me'avdut lecherut. From slavery to freedom. And that's exactly the future, our children. Our children. You don't have to worry about being proud Jews. You don't have to worry about the lack of love for Israel. They were taught on a daily basis. And that's exactly why we're going to have a lot of nachat. And so I always conclude with Hayom. And we'll be celebrating on June 5, right here in this synagogue, the 134th anniversary of this Makam Kadosh. And in gratitude for the freedom that we enjoy, that we missed. Like you mentioned, the blood libel. There was a blood libel even in Albany, if you know your American Jewish history. So, in gratitude for the freedom we enjoy, you want to make sure that future generations, right here in our school, will be taught to love the neighbor, to love Israel, to love Torah, and above all, to be proud Jews. That's what we need. If you're interested in more of my stories, if I have some more time, I'll get around to writing my memoir. But again, what I'm saying, Pesach is coming up, and I wish all of you a Pesach Sameach. But remember, we don't celebrate a holiday without giving and sharing. Giving and sharing. We didn't celebrate Purim without giving and sharing. And you're a role model, Judy. That's exactly what you and your family are all about. So, get rid of your chametz. Those of you who leave the city, Mexico, Miami, Curacao, Portugal, shall I name all the Sidurim? And we have our own Sidurim here. Rabbi Flato, you will be leading them. And I hope you'll take advantage of it. Again, remember one thing, get rid of your chametz, but not only your chametz, whatever problem you have, whatever ails you, get rid of it before Pesach, okay? And I can't have many left us, but he, okay. And wait a minute, Dynamo, our music teacher, rise. And Chrissy, your parents, Mr. and Mrs. Full, will you rise for a moment? No. Chrissy's parents. Looking at you, you're proud of your daughter. Right? So let me see you applaud her, just as we did, okay? Okay. I answer to our students what is important. That means each one of us, whether it's during COVID, whether it's during Hamas, whether it's during anti-Semitism. Tikva, hope, hope. The only nation that has an anthem that starts with hope is Medinat Israel. And remember, we're the privileged ones. 75 years ago, Jews did not have that privilege. Please rise for Hatikva. Now I have a request. These children, outstanding, proud Jews, love Israel, love Torah, love you. Every Friday night, if you don't do it, I want you to, before you eat, make Kiddush. Before you make the Kiddush, I want every child who participated tonight should be blessed by the parents. And I'm counting on you. And I'll show you how to do it. Come over here.
I'm not quiet.
It's not Simchat Torah, okay?
Amen. And that concludes our program for the evening. Thank you all for joining us. There are desserts for the way out. Have a good night and get home safely. Thanks for joining us.